And hello, everybody. Welcome to breaking news coverage here on Narrative as we bring you the latest on the situation in Venezuela and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. I'm joined by Nick Paro, who you all know, but is also a vet and who knows his way around military operations, especially in zones like this. Nick, welcome to our breaking news coverage. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Zev. It's good to be here with you, and thanks for the invite. I appreciate coming on and being able to talk about this because what a way to wake up on
Saturday.
whatever day of the week
It is Saturday.
it is.
It happens to me too all the
I
time.
know.
They just flow into each other. Let's get into the details a little bit
Yeah.
here before we get your analysis, because there is a lot of interesting details that need to be addressed. It all happened around 2 a.m. Eastern time. U.S. Delta Force operators captured Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro in a military operation that lasted 3 hours and 34 minutes. Now, Maduro is currently aboard the USS Iwo Jima. He's heading to New York City to face federal narco-terrorism charges. That is really interesting, considering the president had a press conference in which he spoke mostly about oil, not about narco-terrorism. Now, I want to share some video with you that we have of what the events looked like on the ground. Let me just fix this up a little bit here. This is as things were developing this morning. I mean, this is an incredible scene for people in Caracas to be experiencing in the middle of the night. You see massive explosions, lots of helicopters. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what we're seeing here in terms of the military outlay, in terms of equipment and other stuff that was sent in here.
Yeah, so the helicopters that you're seeing are, there were some Chinooks in there. Those are Marine helicopters and naval helicopters that are, as far as I know, that are going in there. And from the reporting that's come out is it was targeted around Maduro's compound itself. However, the Venezuelan government is accusing the U.S. of bombing civilians and additional military sites in other parts of the country.
What would
It
that have been
sounds like
about? Distraction or just fortifying themselves?
maybe fortifying, but also it could have been hitting multiple. If this was an attack that wasn't, say, a soft coup or some type of takeover from an entity within Venezuela itself, which is what Malcolm Nance talked about this morning with Levin Dean, was that it's possibly a soft coup. Well, not really a soft coup, but a coup.
It is a coup. I mean, it's a takeover. It's
From
not even a
the
coup.
from the defense minister and at least one other, because it sounded like the operation went off very, very quickly. There were 0 American fatalities, which I'm glad. I wish we weren't in there right now, because this is not what we should be doing. This is a distraction to get oil and rare earth minerals and do a hemisphere-wide domination effort for the U.S. But what happened here is they strategically bombed the site. They hit a couple buildings right in Maduro's compound and other areas, because that's spread out through a lot of ground space in Caracas. That's
Yeah.
not isolated to just one neighborhood.
It's a really big city. And, the interesting thing for me is that the Russians have deployed man pads, I guess is what they call them, the BUK M2E air defense system. They have thousands of these in Venezuela. These are very good air defense systems. These are not the kind of air defense systems that would let something like this happen unnoticed, I don't think. I'm not a
Yes.
military person, but it seems like, Russia or the military or
There was
Maduro, someone said stand down on those things. Let's not get any response to the American invasion that's coming in. So there's something happening on the inside, as you point out. It could be the defense minister there, but it could also be Russia itself just saying, we'll go through this theatrical changeover here as we hand power to the vice president, not to the democratically elected leaders of Venezuela, and we can see the sign of that. I guess big red flag on that is that there was no response from the very big air defense systems that Venezuela has.
Yeah, there was buildup of armaments into Venezuela over the last months and weeks, and then just nothing. Like you said, there's an air defense system in Venezuela that should have gone off,
Yeah.
that would have gone off normally had this, and like this is, they aren't moving in a pattern that would be avoiding air defenses.
No.
Like they just went in a straight line formation almost, and just dropped some bombs
The
and
path
left.
was cleared
So
because
the
they
path
would
was
they would have had
cleared
to knock
for
out the
them.
air defense systems, right? I mean, that's the first thing you would
Yeah,
have to do in order to execute something like this effectively. You would have to knock out the air defense systems so you could get in there. They didn't
yeah,
do that. They didn't have the
no,
shock and awe that we saw in Baghdad and in Iraq because they needed to knock out the air defense systems. They just went in. Um,
yeah. And what this, the thing that this I am concerned with, and Malcolm Nance pointed this out rightly, is whoever we dealt with, and when I say we, I mean the U.S. Trump regime and the takeover that they're trying to do, whoever they dealt with, they don't control in the end. Like
right.
this person now has these people now have control of the Venezuelan military and all of the armaments that were built up. And if they decide that they don't want the US to take over, or say we empower a drug gang like Tren de Aragua to actually take over the government of Venezuela, do you think they're going to listen to what we have to say? They're going to attack us. We're going to be in a guerrilla warfare situation because Trump said we are now in control of Venezuela and we will dictate its future. That
Yeah,
means
that
we
is
have to put
absolutely
troops on the
correct.
ground.
Yeah, look, this is in my mind what we're looking at is a potential trap here. You've got the Cubans in there that basically run the intelligence services and the military. They have no interest in making this a cakewalk for the United States. You know, this is
No.
Donald Trump overreaching and now saying he wants to run Venezuela. Let's take a listen to what he said at a press conference earlier on because this is some this is about as unpresidential as you can be in a moment like this.
President, you said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
So wasn't this a war on
Mr. President,
drugs?
does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it, but we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain.
So
This
much
is a
important.
corporate takeover
Yeah.
of Venezuela. It's for oil, it's for rare earth minerals, and it's all about money. It's the real estate policies and real estate practices of like thug real estates and mob real estate
Yeah, it's a
tactics
criminal
that Donald
takeover.
Trump has done all his life. Yeah, it's a criminal takeover. And this is part of Project 2025. They laid out that they wanted a regime change in Venezuela. This is not the end of these types of operations. We literally built up the entire, like, a massive naval force in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. It's not going away. That force wasn't put there just for Venezuela. That was put there to tell other countries, say Mexico, where a lot of the fentanyl actually does
And
come
Colombia,
from,
he went
and Colombia
yeah, he
and
said so.
Panama,
Yeah.
um,
And
and
Iran,
then
frankly. I mean, the other thing that's sort of floating out there in the background is Iran, and his threats
yeah,
yesterday are locked and loaded about Iran. I mean, if this is him exercising his powers for regime change with allied countries, and I say allied countries because Maduro and Venezuela in its current form are allied to Russia and China in the same way that Donald Trump is allied to Russia and China, even though the United States technically is not.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is them playing games on a chessboard that they control. Now that is not helping anything. It's just turning America into a criminal enterprise that is taking over these countries. And I know a lot of people are out there saying, this is democracy. We're bringing democracy, but we're not bringing democracy.
No,
In fact,
we're
we're doing
not.
the exact opposite than bringing democracy. We've ignored the elected democratic leaders, both the opposition leader and the person who won last year. They've instead gone with Delcy Rodriguez, who's Venezuela's vice president currently under Maduro, which means no real change in
Yeah.
the dictatorship in Venezuela. And instead of turning to Edmundo Gonzalez or Maria Corina Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, they've gone with people who aren't democratically elected. They've gone with people who are part of the same machinery. So this really is nothing more than an oil takeover of a sovereign country's assets in order to profit from it. I mean, there's nothing else. He didn't talk about human rights. He didn't talk
Yeah.
about democracy. He didn't talk about
He didn't even talk
legitimate
about
elections.
drugs.
Yeah, he didn't talk about
He didn't
narco-terrorism.
he didn't talk about drugs. He was just like, the oil industry is going to benefit from that. This
Talk to me a
was
little bit more about
supposedly
that.
a war on drugs.
Yeah, because this was
Like,
narco-terrorism capture for the Justice Department.
yes,
That's what we were told this morning.
this was
By
a
12 hours later, where it's now just about the oil. A lot has
Yeah.
changed there.
Yeah, so the indictment that has been put down is around narco-terrorism and is a policing operation, is us doing international policing using U.S. law to do it by. And we indicted a guy and then extradited him from his country and kidnapped him. Like, that's what we did. The U.S. just kidnapped the sovereign head of state of Venezuela with a police or a criminal indictment at the federal level, no international warrant for arrest, no congressional oversight, no congressional authorizations. The only authorizations that we the only information that was provided was that the Gang of Eight, who are the lead senators and congressional members or House members from both sides of that aisle, they said after the strikes were underway, did they then tell the Gang of Eight that we were performing military operations on the ground in Venezuela? They circumvented all due process in the U.S. around military operations. They didn't even frame this as a military operation. They framed it as a policing operation, an international policing operation, where our military went in, kidnapped someone, and now we're going to just hold them up on charges in the U.S. Are they
And
legitimate charges? Maybe, but does it matter if they're legitimate or not? We just kidnapped a head of state to say we can do this so that we can then start doing it elsewhere, because it doesn't end in Latin America or South America or Central or North. It ends in all of the Americas.
There's more than that
what's
as well. There's a potential here that Maduro was involved in all of this. He has been
Yeah.
signaling of the last few days that he's very open to American investments in the U.S., which means, essentially he was conceding defeat. He would have basically walked away. It seems to me like this could just be one of these operations, as you said right at the beginning of the show, designed to distract the American population from what's really going on, which is a tanking economy, the Epstein files, continued pressure in terms of what's going on with the U.S. dollar, the tariffs. This has been a nightmare presidency, already entering its second year now, and continuing to decline. Well, this is the kind of thing presidents do when they're in that position. They, act strong, act tough, create an evasion. This is, not unlike your typical wag the dog scenario that many people have in the past thought about. It could be that this is all theater, as Lev Parnas pointed out earlier.
Yeah, it could be. Like, it could be all theater, but at the same time, this is theater with consequence, even if it is all theater. Like, even if it's the Russians played Maduro and it was a soft coup of sorts and turned into a full-blown coup, and the Russians just let him go. The Chinese would have also needed to let him go and sort of be in on this, but it also could be this just signals that the US has given further permission and further legitimization to the actions of Putin and how he invaded Ukraine.
Right.
This now signals to Xi in China that he can invade Taiwan. This also signals if the U.S. does not have appropriate congressional oversight and put a fucking stop to this, this signals the possible next steps of U.S. involvement in Mexico, Greenland, Canada, Panama, Colombia, where already have been accused of election interference in Honduras, Chile, and I think Ecuador, at least one other country. Like the U.S. is actively demolishing democracies around our hemisphere, and this was the plan: is they want dominant hemispheres for certain countries. The US would own North and South America. Russia gets, I guess, Asia, Northern Asia and Europe, and China gets all of Asia. And Africa is left on its own for whatever purposes. But this is a power play for authoritarian takeovers. It's just
Absolutely.
legitimizing other authoritarian powers.
Because had we seen them take action in favor of the democracy of Venezuela, which it is a democracy, had we seen them say that they'll be returning the opposition leader Machado to power, or anybody else that was democratically elected in Venezuela, this would have been a very different story. But that's not what they're saying. In fact, listen to the president this earlier on talking about the democratically elected leaders who should be in place, or at least becoming ready to take over that country.
If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
Team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro, and right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said,
place ahead of time.
We'll do whatever you need. If you go back.
Yeah, this is, making it up as you go along, but it's also the wrong plan.
Yeah, it's the wrong plan. Like a military, let's just take Iraq and what we did there. We had a plan to go in. We had a plan to get Saddam Hussein and take down the regime. But we then didn't have a plan. We had a slight plan on who we were going to put in, but we didn't have a plan on how to stabilize.
Yeah.
It's like it takes 4 steps to get out of a country if you're going to invade it. Is you have to go in, you then have to execute, you then have to install, and then you have to make sure that it's stable. You don't go in and then go, yeah, we're going to make this shit up as we go along, and we'll just install Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, you can't even run
overseers.
The Department of War, or whatever he's calling it. I mean, now he's going to run a country in the middle of a guerrilla war, potentially. It's so naive and dangerous. And, it reminds us of what exactly you're talking about, Iraq, when you've got, I think it's Colin Powell who said, you broke it, you own it. It's that kind of thing. If we've gone in there and removed the leader, we're stuck running it now. It's not like you can just do that and then walk away. You've got to go in there and run the country effectively. And we have I don't see any plans to do that, and no plans to return even the base democracy that it had before Chavez was elected. So we're back at, we're still in a dictatorship. The oil companies are going to be basically running Venezuela. It'll be up to them to stabilize Venezuela.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we will see are contracts come out for Palantir to begin setting up operations and more operations in Venezuela because they're going to use these as test cases for surveillance states and establishing drone technologies and things like that. Like they're going to, if the tech oligarchy can get away with this takeover that they actually want in Venezuela, because it's not just the oil companies, it's the tech companies that want these resources for AI and for drone advancement. Is they are going to use it as a testing ground, just like they've used Israel as a testing ground and Gaza for surveillance technologies. They're going to start using Venezuela, and they're going to then use those profiles that they are going to create, and they're going to predictively profile for more white supremacist and apartheid like policies in the US off of whatever fake bullshit racial profiling that they're going to do out of
Yeah.
this. That's at least my thought is it's going to be a tech playground is what they if they get what they want, they're going to turn it into a tech playground.
Well, look, I think China have already signaled through Trump there that they would treat the American oil production out of Venezuela in the same way. They want that oil. They want to buy that oil, according to Trump in the press conference earlier. That means China's, dictatorial tendencies are certainly influential there. Russia is not giving up an inch of influence, I bet you, in Venezuela. In fact, they've just extended it by using American military might through their proxy, Donald Trump, to own that.
I think you make a really good point there
Yeah.
on the ownership that's about to happen in terms of partnerships that are going to come out with Chinese and Russian oligarchs into the U.S. more so than they already were, and I think they're like Jared Kushner's going to be all over this, and
Steve Witkoff's going to be
Steve
all over this.
Witkoff's going to be all over this. But it's all going to be business dealings so that they can enrich themselves and get Russian influence into America. They're going to legitimize it however they want or however they can, but we're going to see a lot more Russian influence because of things like this.
Very similar to what happened with Ukraine as well. Like, so, this kind of like slow creep into Ukraine that happened over years. It's interesting what you said about their own enrichment, because just yesterday we reported about a story that Wendy Siegelman broke about how the Trump media group, the leadership there, including Devin Nunes, had just recently acquired a company that had made a play for America's Venezuelan oil interests. That to me says, you've got a situation where Trump himself looks like he is going to enrich himself on the Venezuelan oil that he has just been captured by the American military. And I know you've got to run, but do you want to give us your last thoughts on that before we wrap up here?
Yes, I think that's 100% right. Is the one thing we know, one of the many things we know about Trump is he will grift on anything he can and use it as an opportunity to enrich himself and his family, specifically himself. But he's going to use this as the opportunity to, when he talks about it, he doesn't talk about like the US is taking over control or the US business or US interests. It's his business interests. It is his friends. It is the $1 billion promise that he made to the oil executives before the election, saying, if you give me $1 billion and make me win, you get anything you want in return when I'm president. And this is him fulfilling these promises. This is why JD Vance was added to the ticket. This is why Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense, is so that these things could come to fruition. So Donald Trump could make boatloads of money on black markets and oil and legalized and sanctioned corruption until somebody stops him.
Yep.
And it's going to take somebody having to stop Donald Trump and pushing back. And I said it, I guess my final thing on this is I've said it a couple times, is this is opening the door to other incidents. This is opening the door if the U.S. Congress does not act, if the legislative body, which it's going to, is going to drop the ball again on purpose to show that, oh, they can do this. Well, the funds have not been appropriated and it is legally not allowed. And so these are still kidnappings. These are still illegal orders, more
Can I
than
just ask
likely.
you to drill down on that? You think it's not allowed for them to do a military operation without congressional approval, start a war, in other words? Is the capture of somebody on a foreign country on a judicial grounds, is that considered illegal? Because that's the argument they're making. Not so much.
I'm not a lawyer,
Mhm.
but what I will say is the the legality behind the military and police operations is really laid out on a domestic level,
Mhm.
not as much on an international level. So yes, they're going to find whatever legal loopholes they can. Should we accept any of those legal like loopholes and prefaces? No, we shouldn't. It doesn't matter if legally the US can use military operations as a policing force in the international space and just kidnap a a head of state, because no, we can't do that. Like we can, that is an act of war.
Yep.
Kidnapping the head of state
It sure looks like
of a
one.
country is an act of war. Like legal definition, law of war, international law, this is an act of war. We committed an act of war with no congressional oversight or approval. They were informed after the operation was underway, and we still have not received congressional approval or oversight for the first boat strike, let alone the 30 plus that have gone on since, and now the land operations. So we shouldn't even be like this. So what is every single one of those things matter? Like, if none of that stuff gets approved, that means they're held to a much higher criminal standard, especially on the military side, because killing a civilian
Mm.
knowingly and on purpose, especially outside a time of war, the penalty is death.
You know, I think the military
Like,
was
that is
sold a
the
different
penalty.
story. I think the military was sold the story that they were going to be, returning democracy to, I think that's the story they were told,
Oh,
and that's
absolutely.
and that's not what's happening. Nick Paro, I know you've got to go. Thanks very much for being here on our breaking news coverage. Everyone should be following you, and they are, of course. And if they're not, they must. So on the top left of this stream, you can click the subscribe button and click to Nick Paro's subscribe button. But also, you can find him at Banner and Backbone, and at what's the other one? I always get these
Sick of the
names.
Shit Publications is my home.
I'm scared of
And
swearing. I have this like network background where I can't say the word shit on a broadcast. So, but I just did. Sick of the shit.
You did.
Productions. I did, and I just said your name, name of production. Nick Parra, thanks for being here as always. Terrific having you on our breaking news coverage.
Thanks for having me, Zev. I really appreciate it. And we'll be talking more and a lot about this throughout the coming days and weeks, until we finally get some accountability. Because somebody said it before I go, somebody said in the audience, another lame should. There goes another lame should. Yes, we should be doing a lot more as a country. If you're saying there's another lame should, that we should be doing this in this country, and you're not actively calling your representatives or your senators or emailing them or emailing and contacting your state legislators and your governors, or going out and starting your own podcast and putting out and writing articles. If you're just saying another lame should, then you should be doing more. If you're still saying should, you're not doing enough yourself. And there's really no, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to just let fascism take over, or are you going to actually get up and start doing the things that are saying should be done? Zev and I are out here doing the things that should be done by doing them. Okay, then do them, Myra. If you want to keep pushing back on the word should, okay, then you do them. You
Should
go
is
out
not an
and
action
do
word.
it
She's
with
right,
us.
but
It's not an action
what
word.
you do matters right now. So everyone
Yeah.
take Nick's alert there seriously, because if we don't do something right now, as we head into these next election months, and who knows if they are even going to be real elections, we need a big, massive stand against fascism in November next year. Nick, have a great day. Great to see you.
Thanks, Zev. Appreciate it.
Bye. We'll continue a little bit along here just to catch you up on the news. If you missed it, of course, Maduro has been captured. He's on his way to the United States, to New York City, in what they said was initially a justice operation to extract a narco-terrorist. Well, he's been extracted along with his wife. Hours later, the story changed dramatically. We started hearing all about oil and oil and oil. Take a listen to the president as he talks about building the oil infrastructure in the coming months, not about returning democracy to Venezuela.
It's actually very dangerous. It's blow up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when
Well,
it comes to
in
the
terms of
oil and
China
drugs?
and Russia, Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to go. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now. But I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that? Oh,
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. It's actually.
You know what's missing there? You're going to have peace, justice, some of the money. Of course, he wants some of it himself. But we did not hear him talk about democracy returning to Venezuela, which, of course, is the main reason you would have wanted to do a regime change like this around Maduro. It wouldn't have been about the oil, but he makes no qualms about the fact that he is doing it for the oil. And he also mentioned quite clearly that he intends to sell oil to both Russia and China. Those are his two big partners in the foreign world, and to do this in order to become a vendor for oil for Russia and China. That is quite unbelievable in terms of a foreign policy shift. This used to be a country that did this for rights or human rights, at least pretended to do it for human rights. Now that pretense is gone completely. We've just basically subverted our army for the use of the Russians and the Chinese to basically increase the Venezuelan oil flow. There is a lot of truth in what he's saying in terms of the production facilities in Venezuela needing an upgrade. They do. They've been stuck in the dark ages for a bit. Now they're going to get that upgrade, which means many more barrels of oil are going to come out of Venezuela's ground, but it's not going to be an operation that's run by the Venezuelan people. It's going to be run by the largely American-owned oil companies. The clients will still be China and Russia, and the idea of democracy completely disappeared in his talk over there. I want to play you some video that we showed you earlier on. This is as the event was taking place, as Maduro was being captured by American helicopters. I'll play you the sound, and then I'll introduce some interesting analysis on this. Now, while you're seeing many explosions there in Caracas in the early hours of this morning, late last night as well, what you're not seeing is a lot of return fire from air defense systems. That says a lot. That says to you that inside the Venezuelan military, whether it's orders from Russia, whether it's orders from China, whether it's orders from Maduro himself, they were told to stand down. And it's not like they don't have a lot of military air defense systems. They have a lot. The people of Russia have been providing them enormous air defense systems for a long period of time. These are called man pads. And these man pads are specifically designed to target low flying aircraft. So the fact that the US military just drove a straight line into Caracas and were able to pick up the dictator Maduro and bring him back to New York is just highly questionable. It doesn't look like the military was in a position to respond or told to respond. Where were the 5,000 man pads that are currently in operation in Venezuela? Why was nothing done in order to stop this, supposed assault on sovereignty that was happening inside Venezuela? Those are very big questions today. Not a single man pad was fired. 0 fighter jets were scrambled. No resistance from battle-ready forces. There are a very large army in Venezuela. I think almost 1 million people, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that's a little high, but in the reserves as well, I think altogether it's about 1 million people. Plus the Cubans have a big interest there. So to have none of that activated as the U.S. military pretends that it went in on some covert mission and secretly was able to extract Maduro because of their prowess. Well, they do have a lot of significant military control and firepower, but this was not what the president is saying. This was not what the Secretary of State is saying. It's not what Pete Hegseth was saying, that this is some, capture in the way that you would expect an enemy state to do this to another enemy state. This was coordinated. Pravda USA, of course, the Russian mouthpiece for the Kremlin, is citing Russian military analysts asking the same question, and they would know because they are very much in connection with the Venezuelan army, so they would know why there was no resistance to this invasion. So what we're seeing there is a public, decrying and saying, why wasn't there a response to the American invasion? But the Russians, on the other hand, must have conceded to this. They have the BUK M2E systems at the La Carlota air base. Now, these were destroyed, but they never engaged the U.S. aircraft. Russian air defense systems operated by a regime closely allied with Russia, they didn't even fire a single shot. So Russia knew what was going on, even though publicly they're arguing that, as surprised as anybody about why there was no response. Lev Parnas, our good friend here on Narrative, busy doing another show right now, so he couldn't come on, but maybe he will join us. He pointed out that there were Venezuelan negotiations during Trump's first administration the other day. He was involved in those negotiations, so he's aware of the kind of choreography that needs to go on in order for Trump and company, for the criminal cartel, the syndicate, to control the Venezuelan oil, what needed to happen. So, again, Parnas is saying that this was choreographed. It was discussed in secret conversations as early as January the 1st. Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Kirill Dmitriev, a Russian official, were all dialed in to what was going to happen in Venezuela. So, 2 days later, here we are seeing that happen. If the Russians were involved, they're feigning surprise by saying that they're surprised that the air defense systems did not fall into place. This is what Parnas actually said. Lev said, I've been telling you for a long time that Putin has used Maduro as a pawn, a pressure point, and a bargaining chip. Publicly, Russia condemns and postures. Privately, they use these pieces on board to shape outcomes and trade leverage across regions. And that is, in fact, what we're going to see. This is not what the American military and the American president are telling us. This is, in fact, an operation that was coordinated amongst adversarial nations, amongst Russia, amongst China, and even potentially amongst Maduro himself. We don't know that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that, in fact, is the case. The Russian foreign secretary and the UN ambassador have all said that this is armed aggression. It is not armed aggression in the way that they would not have been aware of, because if there was armed aggression, we would be in a full-scale war right now. Now, we may also be finding ourselves in a full-scale war, because this reminds us a lot of what happened in Iraq, where we were mission successful, or whatever it is George Bush at the time put on that vessel when he declared the mission over in Iraq. Well, this is what this feels like. We've captured Maduro. We'll return Venezuela to its rightful place. In reality, there are many, many guerrilla forces. No guerrilla force is united under one general. You'll expect a lot of infighting amongst the guerrilla forces, a lot of jockeying for power. The American military and Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of War and now Governor Regent of Venezuela, will have a lot on their hands as they try to stabilize a country that is not easy to control. I mean, this is a country that has been under military dictatorship for a long time. Now that power is fraying, you can imagine a lot of people are going to be demanding significant, their bit of gold, or their bit of oil, or their bit of power, because that's the way these things tend to work. Let's play you another clip earlier on from what we were talking about earlier. This is Donald Trump again from the press conference earlier on.
Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that?
Well, no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case
Putin.
I'll go one. It's about who?
It's about Putin. If you want
About Putin. Well, that's
Okay.
always nice
You had a
to talk
phone-
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
There was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days.
Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as?
Now, we've heard that before. The question there is really interesting about the presence of the U.S. military. And I also want to play you something from, and I've invited, thanks everyone for pointing out that Lev Parnas joined and Terence Goggin joined. I've sent you both invites through Stage 10. I know Professor Goggin is not used to Stage 10, so it might take a second to set him up. Lev, I sent you the invite as well. If you want to jump on, we'd be glad to have you on to discuss this breaking news. In the meantime, I just want to make sure that you hear from this quote. I think this was when they first released the picture of Maduro as he was traveling back on the USS Iwo Jima. And there's the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, doing all the pretense in the world about how successful they were in this powerful take action regime. Let's take a listen.
Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. Basically, like.
You know, what's so important here is the messaging to other leaders. He mentioned as well the Colombian leader. He also has been signaling in the last few days that Iran needs to be careful in the same way, that he quite seriously means regime change. I'm so stunned to hear Marco Rubio, who for years has been an advocate of democracy in Cuba, and to hear him discuss the American takeover of a dictatorial regime and basically working hand in hand with a dictatorial regime to use that country for its oil supply. This is a stunning turn of events for a man who was so, anti-Fidel Castro for so many years. He has more than drunk the Kool-Aid. He is fully bathed in it, and it is atrocious to see him, someone who many people respected for a lot of time, to be so deeply involved in this takeover of Venezuela, which, you just have to look at what other experiences America's had as it's been lured into wars in various parts of the world. Just think about Vietnam, think about Korea, think about Afghanistan. These were all on the borders of Russia and of China. Now here we are being lured into a war in Venezuela, also heavily influenced by Russia and China. We seem to never learn our lessons. And I'm not quite sure, and this is why if Terence Goggin wants to join, I hope he can figure it out on the stage 10, and if Lev Parnas wants to join, it'll be great. It would be amazing to hear from Terence Goggin with his knowledge about the military. Were they sold a bill of goods that they were somehow going to be returning democracy to Venezuela? Because this is not what they're doing, obviously. Now it's all, mask is off from the president of the United States. He's clearly all about oil. He clearly wants to make as much money out of this as possible, and we now have the evidence, the actual money trail of a potential takeover of the company that will be taking over the Venezuelan oil by Trump's own people. I mean, that is really happening. Wendy Siegelman had the story yesterday. You can't look at all that and not come to the conclusion that this is a run for resources by a criminal syndicate, and the American military was used to do that. Now we're stuck in a situation where we own the mess in Venezuela. We have to defend Venezuela and defend the population of Venezuela against what could be a real instability. There is a huge guerrilla movement involved. They're military force, but when they take away the power, central power of any situation like that, they'll be fraying along the edges. They'll be fighting. There'll be the Cubans in there, and you got to believe the Russians and the Chinese will love nothing more than to bring in and entrench the American military in another quagmire in Venezuela, because that is what is likely to happen, because they want that. How great for Putin to be able to then, with America distracted in Venezuela, how great for him to be able to attack Ukraine. How easy will it be for Xi to take Taiwan if we're so focused on Venezuela? And not only Venezuela, you heard the president there also talk about the Monroe Doctrine. Did he rename it the Donroe Doctrine in just the most ill-fitted way? Well, if that's the case, if he thinks that this is all about hemispheric control and that he wants to control the entire hemisphere, that this should terrify Ottawa. As we've heard already, that there are interests in attacking Canada. It should absolutely send a shiver down the spine of the entire European Union, but especially Denmark, which have control of Greenland, which could also come under attack by the United States. If this is the kind of thing you can do, well, what's stopping him from coming in and removing Mark Carney from office because of some alleged theoretical crime, narco-terrorism, call it what you will, and saying that Canada is his? I mean, what's really the difference? There isn't. Same thing with Greenland, which has absolutely no defenses, really, compared to what Europe has. So, this is the territory we are now gingerly, not so gingerly, finding ourselves in as we turn into 2026. A world where a lawless president is willing to take over, as you heard Marco Rubio there say, take action to take over countries simply for their resources. There is no credible underpinning for any of this except that. And that is why, Canadians should be considering how serious a threat this is to Canada. And the European Union has a lot of work to do, not only in supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine is really the buffer that we have, but we also should expect that Xi, who has been this last week doing practices of what a blockade against Taiwan would look like. Well, just think about what that looks like. If Taiwan is now taken over by China, you've got Israel taking over Gaza, perhaps the West Bank. You've got Russia moving to restore the Soviet Union, meaning all those countries on the Russian-European border, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, all those countries, they become back into the Russian sphere of influence. Maybe Ukraine falls, maybe Moldova, all these other countries, and then pushing further and further west. Can Europe, can Germany, can Great Britain, can France be enough of a deterrent to stop that pushback into the west? And certainly in Canada, where there is a limited military force, can it really stand up to this brazen military force and this doctrine the American president is now espousing, taking over countries for no good reason other than their oil? Speaking of which, let's play one more clip. We'll continue our efforts to get Lev or Terry Goggins to join us. But if not, we'll just sign off in a bit here. Also happy to take any questions you have. If you have any you want to share, any thoughts, write to me on the chat, and we'll play those back in just a few short seconds from now. So this is, let's see what this is. This is, again, Donald Trump talking about the failed escape.
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So where's Maduro going to be?
Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's why we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. Could have happened.
So much too important to unpack there. How long will you be running Venezuela? This is the takeover of an independent country, by the way, with a very large military force that is largely influenced by Russia and China, that America thinks they can just take over by removing Maduro. That is not how things work. Now, of course, there's a deal, obviously, with the oil companies, and maybe that will secure the infrastructure, but it does seem kind of naive if they think that they can march into a country that has had decades of dictatorial rule and military buildup, and they think that they can just take it over by saying so. That is not real. I mean, it's just not the way things work. So, we are potentially facing, as I mentioned earlier, a quagmire that is quite significant, and people really need to be conservative. It says Lev is on the way. Yes. I was on with you now. Yeah, Lev says he's coming. I sent him a link, and hopefully he'll join us. If there's any difficulty there, Lev, let me know, and I'll send you another link. Just looking at some of your questions here. Do you think it was planned beforehand with Maduro being an easy pickup? Uh, Absolutely. I think this was planned beforehand. I think you can't look at an operation like this and see what I pointed out earlier to you, where, by the way, this whole thing took place in a full moon. This is not the kind of conditions. If I'm not a military person, I'm not a general, but generally speaking, you would not go into an operation like this with a full moon shining in the background, and yet here they were doing it in a full moon. If this, it obviously there was no reaction by anybody. Or we'll take a look at this video again. This sky would have been lit up with missiles attacking these helicopters. That is not what happened. There are no air defense missiles going on. There is no attempt to stop this capture of the Venezuelan leader. There is nothing like that. So what we're seeing then is something that was coordinated, something that was, had the buy-in either from the Maduro himself or other people within the administration. And certainly the fact that they leaned so quickly into the vice president of Venezuela and not the opposition leaders tells you exactly that this has been a coordinated inside job. And it doesn't take a long history to understand what happened to other world leaders who came to face justice in America. You think of Marcos in the Philippines. Yeah, he came to face justice in America, but he also got away with a lot more. Connects directly into Jeffrey Epstein. Actually, the whole Marcos theft of money connects to Paul Manafort as well. All that theft of money from the Philippine people through Marcos. There's a lot of questions about where that money went when they supposedly declared bankruptcy, and who was the prosecutor for the Marcoses. Rudy Giuliani, none other than our famous bagman for Donald Trump. I mean, the circle here of people is very, very small. So if you look at what happened to Marcos, this is the same thing that could happen to Maduro, where he's brought here to the United States. He lives very comfortably in a very nice place in New York, as Marcos did in the I think he was in the Olympic Palace, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a lot of theater. Clearly, this is what Lev has been talking about, and why I'm so keen to have him on, is because I am really interested in hearing his take about the similarities between this and Marcos, the similarities between this and also Nicaragua. There are oftentimes choreographed events that happen in the world which would never ever revealed to people, but now with Substack, now with platforms like this, where independent journalists like myself and others can go out there and say what we can say without any restrictions, well, it certainly begins to beg the question: how did they maintain that public narrative that they're going to tell everyone? Because for all intents and purposes, you'll see the legacy media lining up behind the bravery of the military operation, the courage it took, the ability to land and capture Maduro in the dead of night, when the reality must be very different from that. And that is why it's so important for you, the viewers of this show, the Substack followers, to keep sharing this content with other people, to keep making sure that this kind of questioning, smart, integrity-driven questioning, these are not, I'm not saying conspiracy theories here, these are not things I'm just throwing out there. These are factual questions I'm asking that are really important, that the public knows that they need to find answers to, and we need to push our legacy media to do the same. It's unforgivable if these kinds of questions are not raised time and time again with the president, with Pete Hegseth, and with Marco Rubio. We absolutely need to be asking how this attack took place, seemingly without any opposition, seemingly without any fire taking place against that. So again, use that button at the bottom of the screen here on the chat section where it says the square and the arrow. People Dean always does this. I've never done this before. But there you go. You hit that button, if you will, and also share this content when we finish the show, publishing it. I don't know if Lev is going to be here. I hope so. And if there's an issue, come on board, Lev. I'll continue talking for a little bit here because I can. It says here, I for one welcome our new Canadian NATO overlords. I wish this is from Jandro Kirkish. I think it's really important that the Canadian leadership and the existing European leadership begins to realize how serious a threat this is to their own existence and the democratic forces within their country. Donald Trump has said out loud that he intends to support far-right extremist Nazi-like parties in Europe and elsewhere in order to crush democracies in Europe. Well, it's also important that democracy is supported by Canadians and by Europeans as well, because democracy is obviously not just an idea that died when Donald Trump became president of the United States. This was a takeover by a criminal regime that took over the democratic votes and the democratic election. They installed themselves in that leadership position, and everybody else in the world who supports democracy needs to support the American people. We need the American people to be supported for their own democratic needs and their own democratic desires. I know Lev is on the chat. He's not joining us yet on where I can join him. So Lev, if you're watching, I know you said you'll be joining us soon. Take your time. But just so everyone is on the chat, we know that he's watching. So, just again, the important thing here is everyone needs to stand up for democracy, needs to stand up for the American people's rights to democracy. And this kind of, Kremlin style show, this is a show that they're doing for public consumption. We need to call it out time and time again. This is not something the American military should be used for. This that received no congressional approval from anybody. I mean, think about how ridiculous it is that the Congress was not entrusted, at least even the key people in Congress, entrusted with knowledge of this assault on the regime. And they're all probably hedging their bets right now, saying, if this succeeds, no problem, we'll support it all the way, like they did with Nicaragua. But if it doesn't succeed, you got to believe that they'll be running away from this by the time November comes so far, because no one wants to be caught in a quagmire. America's seen this play out before, and we could see it again here. Now, administration might have naively believed the Russians and the Cubans and everybody else. Everybody on the chat, I've invited Lev. He has a link in his phone. He knows to get, as soon as he's free, he'll be able to join us. But just keep in mind that this administration could have been played by Russia and by China into drawing us into a quagmire. It is not the first time this administration would have been led into a position that is jeopardizing American national security interests. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it in Ukraine. We've seen it repeatedly around the world. And we're going to see it now, potentially, where the administration is going to assure everybody, no problem, we're going to rule Venezuela. We're going to take over the oil. The oil companies are going to help us rebuild. That isn't necessarily what's going to happen. That is what Donald Trump would like to see happen. If you look at it from Putin's perspective, it is much nicer if they can draw America into a quagmire, into a military quagmire, the likes of Vietnam, Ukraine, the likes of Afghanistan, the likes of Iraq. I mean, we've seen this play so many times. And so from their perspective, they would like to see the American forces stuck in wars in this hemisphere and not helping defend fellow democracies in Europe or in Asia. And that is the nightmare scenario that could be playing out here. Can Congress stop this? Will Congress stop this? Well, it's a bit late now. It's already happened. When you own a situation like this, as we found out in the Iraq War, you own it. So they have to fix it. And there's no way to return Maduro now to power there. What will now play out will play out. And that could mean a long-scale war, as I see it. I mean, anything can happen, of course. We know it's possible that this will land up being super smooth. but it also is possible that it won't be super smooth. Nobody here is suggesting Maduro was a great enlightened leader who should stay in power. I'm not suggesting that. The guy was an awful dictator. He killed many Venezuelans. He subjected them to awful oppression and suppression. But we're not even pretending we're getting rid of his government. We're working in concert with his government. We're not bringing in the opposition leaders that should be brought in. Just last year, we had the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado given the Nobel Peace Prize for fighting for Venezuelan democracy. The fact that she's not even being discussed as a potential new leader is very revealing. And I don't know if I have this exact quote here, but let's take a look to see if we can hear Donald Trump talking about why Maria Corina Machado and also why Edmundo Gonzalez, who also won the presidential elections in July 2024, why they are not being considered to run Venezuela.
If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
Team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country.
That's
and
fascinating.
They destroyed it.
That's really interesting.
Remember, you mentioned that would run Venezuela.
Stop that. That's really interesting that they're leaning so deeply into the bench that Maduro had, that they're not interested in returning the democratically elected leaders, opposition leaders. They completely dismissed them out of hand. I think he said about Maria Corina Machado that she's not respected in the country. How is that possible? She won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, the prize he was trying to get. The fact that he's now saying she doesn't have respect, she won't be running Venezuela. How is he determining that? Why is he determining that? Why aren't the people of Venezuela determining that? And this becomes the real question that we have to ask about the integrity of this takeover. I see the very interesting Terrence Goggin is here. I keep calling you Terry, and I know that's not. You're upside down, sir. If you want to turn your camera around, I'll be able to. There you go. Still upside down, but I'm not going to put you on until you just got to go a long ways. I know you can. If I put you on, you're going to look like this, so you have to turn your camera around. This is, of course, the West Point history professor, Terrence Goggin. You all follow him on Substack here. I've been following your coverage of the last few days, Professor. You've been quite in favor, I would say, of the potential here for democratic change in Venezuela now that this is happening. You're still upside down now. It's going to be the other way. You're still upside down, sir.
Upside down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I know you can't see yourself. It's a different system than the one you're used to. So the way you had yourself before was the right way up. Oops, now we lost you completely. There you go.
This is not my area of expertise.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Yes, you said I was in favor of Democratic Machado taking over. Yes.
But we're not seeing that. I mean, now we're seeing the president saying she's not respected. She won't be running Venezuela. His indications are that he is, going to work with the vice president, who's currently Delcy Rodriguez. She's been sworn in now as the president in Maduro's absence. No mention of any opposition leaders. He's not going anywhere near that. All he seems to be talking about is oil.
Yeah, I just wrote a Substack special report, my second one today. I wrote one earlier. Yes, I noticed that in the press conference. To say that Machado is not popular is like saying that Barack Obama is not popular. 60% of the public like him. She just won an election, her group, with 80% of the vote. So that's not exactly unpopular. She, in fact, has a very strong position politically. As the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, she has organized the opposition, which was a bit fragmented, and it now has a significant power, which is latent power. Now that Machado has been toppled, for the president to suggest that he was going to appoint her to lead the country under the direction of the Secretary of State, or whatever that really was, that he suggested during the press conference is ludicrous. It would lead to civil war, or could lead to civil war.
Talk to me about
that won't be accepted by the public in Venezuela. It'd be another Iraq.
Right. Isn't that where we're heading
We
now?
weren't accepted in Iraq. We won't be accepted in Venezuela. It's stupid. So it's just not going to happen.
But this is exactly what he's trying to say. I mean, he is saying that the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and Marco Rubio will be working alongside Delcy Rodriguez, the former vice president under Maduro, and the new president of Venezuela, and that they will work with the oil companies to restore infrastructure, and the Venezuelan people will be happy because they're going to get some of the money.
But Sev, he says all sorts of things that aren't true.
I know that.
He can't do that. How's he going to do that without putting the United States Marine Corps, maybe 2 or 3 divisions, to occupy the entire country? You can't do that. He can't do that. He's not going to do that. Congress would have a heart attack, a collective heart attack. That's not going to happen.
But
what's going to happen is,
what happens? I don't want to interrupt your thought there, but just the idea that if we're stuck there and we've toppled the Maduro government, let's say, don't we own that problem now, like we did in Iraq? We have to be there now because we just caused the chaos.
I don't, these are lots of slogans, my friend. This is just, you're sloganeering here. Critically think.
Yeah.
Think for yourself. Don't listen to other people. You're very intelligent. Focus on facts. Mm-hmm. Facts are that the opposition won 80% of the national vote a year ago. That hasn't gone away. That exists today. If 80% of the public oppose the United States running the country, it won't be able to run the country. Mm. And, what kind of, even with a huge military force like we had in Iraq, we couldn't run Iraq. It's impossible. Now, what is really going on here is the existing Venezuelan military are desperate for money because they haven't been paid. So what he is doing, I think, is cutting a deal with the military. Look, I'll pay you, stay there, control the country as best you can, and we'll work something out so that you're not going to be prosecuted for all of your human rights violations in the past. We'll have a government that will protect you and so forth, in the hopes that by keeping a rump regime in power, and which he will finance, that he can move the oil companies in to take over the oil fields. So I think that's pretty clearly his plan. Right. The problem is that the people won't accept that. There's a lot of nationalism in Venezuela, and the Chavistas originally took advantage of that in their revolution in 2002. That's when Hugo Chavez became an authoritarian from being a relatively popular president. He started seizing properties and so forth, and he became very unpopular. But in any event, the military has kept him in power. The people oppose him, and now that that Maduro, his successor, has been toppled, all bets are off. Now, one of the reasons that Maria
Corina Machado,
Machado got the Nobel Peace Prize because she impressed the Nordics and the Europeans with the fact that she'd kept peace, that she was for a peaceful transition of power to work it out with the existing military.
Now, she's not the actual
basically-
winner of the last presidential elections. The winner of the last presidential elections in July 2024 was Edmundo Gonzalez. He won the 80%, as far as I'm aware. So he's
No, wait a minute. Let
Yeah.
me tell you,
Yeah.
he ran as her surrogate because she was forbidden to be able to run. So the only reason he won was because he was her surrogate. She has no question. She's the
okay.
leader of the opposition. That's undisputed at this point. Now, the question is, what does Trump do with this? Well, he obviously wants to turn the country over to the oil companies. I gather that's what he said in a press conference.
Sounds like
but
it.
that's not realistic at all. And then there's the United States Congress to deal with, which is now going to become, in probably 12 months or so, a Democratic Congress, given where the polls are with the Republicans. So he's going to have enormous opposition there.
So let's
So
sharpen
it's
this a little bit, if you don't mind here. Just thinking about what we can say. The Congress has a real role now in terms of pushing the administration towards ensuring that the elected opposition, the democratically elected opposition in Venezuela, actually take over. I mean, this is a golden opportunity for Democrats and the whole Congress to push this president into doing the right thing in Venezuela and not continue to work with just the oil companies and Delcy Rodriguez.
I didn't. Is that a question?
It's a statement. I'm
What-
hoping
what's
you'll
the-
agree.
what's your
with this.
question?
Do you agree with that? Do you think this is an opportunity for them?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The question is,
make it a short question, please.
Should Congress be pushing the president now to not continue to work with Delcy Rodriguez, but rather to return Machado to at least a place where she can run for election and to work towards democratic elections in Venezuela?
Well, of course, Congress should support the democratically elected opposition candidate who's just elected a year ago with 80% of the vote. It's an obvious truism that they should support that. But that, of course, is not Mr. Trump's agenda. Mr. Trump's agenda, as he made clear in the press conference, is all about the oil and starting up the pumping and putting in billions of dollars from the private oil industry into Venezuela, which, by the way, was one of the original reasons that Chavez was able to take over the country, because the country was very upset with the fact that the oil companies were calling all the economic shots at the time. That they're not going to go back to that. So there's a lot of heavy boots to be dropped here yet. I mean, it's very unclear what is actually going to happen. But I'm very surprised that the advisors to Mr. Trump have not persuaded him to do the obvious thing and support the Democratic opposition and work with them. And they would probably be willing to work with the oil companies, particularly European oil companies, by the way, but both European and U.S. oil companies. That's the only way Venezuela can recover its economy. So all of that is
why hasn't he done that? Why haven't these officials said that to him? Why haven't these officials supported the Democratic opposition leaders there?
Why haven't what officials supported this?
Why haven't the
Republican officials?
The advisors to the president, why are they not supporting the opposition leaders, the democratically elected opposition leaders there? Why are they still supporting?
You'd have to ask them that question.
If you were guessing.
I think it's probably they're scared to death of Trump. That's really a problem for all of those advisors to him. He surrounded himself with yes men. Although Marco Rubio traditionally hasn't been a yes man, but he's sold his soul to Trump.
It does
So
appear so,
he's
yeah.
going along with him right now. But the point is, it's going to be unsuccessful, and Marco Rubio knows it's going to be unsuccessful. If you don't deal with the Democratic opposition, you are then going to become an imperial power. They're going to fight you tooth and nail. They already have a guerrilla force ready to go. She's kept it under wraps. They're armed. They've been armed for years. They could start a civil war if they wanted to. They don't want to tear up the country. They want to inherit the country and heal it. That's what they want to do. But if Trump abandons them and tries to cut a deal with the current regime, they don't have really much of a choice. And then they'll draw the Europeans in. The Europeans will finance the opposition because they'll be interested in getting the oil too. It's going to be a bloody mess, and nobody's going to win, and it's going to be very sad.
Is there a
it turns
precedent
into a
for
civil
any
war.
of this in your historical knowledge? Is there a precedent for any of this takeover by an American president?
Is there what? I didn't
A
understand that.
precedent for this kind of takeover? Has this ever happened before, where the U.S. Presidency has done something like this?
That's a good question. No, that's never happened before. That it's been so blatantly said. However, the Vietnam War was basically a question of supporting a puppet regime that reported to Johnson and Nixon. Kennedy, before his assassination, was going to cut them out. Was going to leave. There's a lot of evidence to that effect. But Johnson got his ego involved, and he stuck by them, and they did what Johnson told them until they saw a better deal from Nixon, and then they switched sides and started supporting Nixon and helped Nixon win the election in '68. Then they were definitely at that point puppets of Nixon. So yes, Vietnam is a good example of this being attempted to be done, although they never were as blatant as Trump just was. I mean, I've never seen a president say something like that.
It is kind of jarring to hear this president not even mention the word democracy and elections during a press conference like this. Every other American president would at least have attempted to look like he was pro-democracy. In this case, there isn't even any of that. He's just talking about oil, and he is also referencing Russia and China as well. And this really brings up this alliance between Trump, Russia, and China in terms of there seems to have been a backroom deal, and Lev Parnas is also telling us the same thing. There was some sort of backroom deal discussed January 1st with people like Dmitry and others.
I read that. That sounds very implausible to me. I don't know what evidence there is to support that stuff. Iran and Russia, they sell light crude oil or light petroleum products to Venezuela. They're not buyers, they're sellers. They sell light petroleum products to Venezuela because Venezuela's crude is very heavy. So it needs to be lightened so it will move through the pipelines and through the up from the soil, which is very heavy soil. It needs to be liquefied, and their products are used to liquefy it. So they're not purchasers of Venezuela oil. They already have all the oil they need. What?
China is a purchaser?
China is.
Mhm.
Yeah, but look at China. China doesn't have a blue water navy. They don't have any ability to bring any pressure or force in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, they may cut deals in the Western Hemisphere, but they don't have any way to enforce military pressure. I mean, nobody in the Western Hemisphere can come in. I mean, I should say, nobody in the world has ever been able to come into the Western Hemisphere and dominate a country in the Western Hemisphere since the United States came into existence. With the one exception of during the Civil War, France, Napoleon III, came in and invaded Mexico and installed the Grand Duke of Austria as the emperor. And that lasted for 3 or 4 years until General Grant, who had just become president, told him, get the hell out. If you don't, I'm going to send my Civil War army in and kick you out. And Napoleon III took the hint and got out. No other foreign country is going to be able to dominate a country in the Western Hemisphere. They don't have the Navy to do it.
But isn't
I
this
mean,
what
it
what
just
has
isn't
happened?
possible.
Isn't
What?
that what happened in Venezuela with Maduro? He's heavily supported by Russia, heavily supported by the Chinese in terms of the oil purchases. I mean, this is he's been propped up by Russian for a long time.
If he was well supported by Russia and China, why is he in jail? Why has he
Well,
been arrested?
that's a
They could
good
have they could
question,
have
isn't it?
prevented that if they had all this power. They don't have that kind of power.
Why
I
why
mean,
was there no response in this assault on a sovereign state? Why was there no air defense missiles fired? Why were there all Russian, by the way? Why was there no attempt to really stop it? There was basically this very sophisticated military did not respond to this. You know, the American military flying there in a straight line with helicopters, picking up their leader and taking him to New York.
why didn't you were speaking so fast I
Oh.
didn't understand it. Why
Why, from a military
what's your
perspective,
question again?
the question is, why was there not a military response from the Venezuelan military?
Oh, well, there's a very good answer for that. The Venezuelan military's sophisticated weapons have not been properly maintained for a decade. Their air force is basically in parts. Their armor is not functional. Their sophisticated means of defense, which would include anti-aircraft capability, are in similar condition, although I'm told by reliable sources that their air defense was in fairly decent shape. And of course, those were the first things that we knocked out. That's where all the explosions were. All the explosions you saw on TV last night were on sites that would interfere with those helicopters coming in. The helicopters were sitting ducks if the anti-aircraft capability wasn't taken out ahead of time, and they were taken out by the fighter bombers, so they had an easy road into Caracas, into wherever Maduro was located, and they didn't have the capability of resisting, nor the willpower to resist. Actually, I mean, the military in Venezuela hasn't been paid regularly for years, and they're very upset about that. That's a well-known fact. So they're not in any real position to oppose anything. They'll go along with whatever they can get along with. The people that can oppose the United States, it's a democratic opposition, and they do have capabilities, guerrilla capabilities of fighting the United States if the United States insists on backing the rump government of Maduro. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense.
Well, let me push back on what you're saying there, because you're also saying that the deal was cut with the military of Venezuela. No, which was it? Was the deal cut that they chose not to, or did they choose not to respond because their air defense missiles were taken down? I mean, it seems to me that it's either one or the other, and it can't be both. Also, you know, there are 5,000, I'm told, man-pads, I don't even know what those are, operators in Venezuela. These are supposedly the air defense systems that come out of Russia. Fairly new ones were sent there. Specifically, these are kinds of air defense systems that are designed to combat low-flying aircraft like these helicopters. Not a single man-pad was fired during this entire operation.
Well, that's not true. There were some that were fired. They were taken out by bombs and missiles.
Okay.
The proof's in the pudding, Seth. Those are all rumors. The facts are the facts.
These are
There
facts.
was very heavy action by our fighter bombers in suppressing all of the known anti-aircraft capabilities. They didn't cut any deal. The military of the United States wouldn't trust any deals with Russians.
Didn't you say that there was a deal?
Are you kidding me?
Just a few minutes ago,
What?
didn't you say that there was a deal between Trump and the military? Didn't you say that there was a deal?
No, you said something about a deal with the Russians.
No. With Maduro's military people. A few minutes ago in our conversation, you said
Well, it's a Maduro. No, well, there may have been some sort of a deal with the military. That is quite possible. The Venezuelan military are terribly upset with not being paid. So if they cut a deal with the military that they would ensure that they'd be paid, that their payroll would be restored, I'm sure they would have just gone along with it. And that may, in fact, have happened. But it's the foreign influence here that just isn't relevant. The most important thing is what people aren't talking about, and that is the opposition. What is the opposition's position going to be tomorrow or next week or next month? Do you think they're going to sit by after they won a huge election and just let the United States dictate through Maduro's former vice president, who is now supposedly the president, and that she would be able to run the country? I mean, it just will incite civil war.
I mean, I agree with you there. I think this is a setup to a potential quagmire. I mean, if the U.S. military thinks it can stabilize this country, it's not so easy. You've got Cuba's enormous influence there, especially in the military, but you've also got the guerrilla armies of the opposition, as well, as you point out. A lot could go wrong if we continue this path of just supporting the now new president. Delcy Rodriguez, if we continue on this path and we think we can control this country through oil companies, it's a recipe for disaster, I think, in terms of geopolitical implications, in terms of what happens for Asia and Taiwan, what happens to Russia and Ukraine. These are all very significant things.
Well, it certainly would impact our reputation in the world. You're right about that. And to the extent we got bogged down in Venezuela in a semi-Iraqi kind of war, it would seriously erode our ability to deter, particularly on Taiwan. I think the Europeans and the Ukrainians have Russia pretty well deterred, contained, at least so far as strategic questions are concerned. Tactically, they may be making a few inroads. Russia may be making inroads in Ukraine, but they're not going to succeed strategically in breaking the line. But Taiwan's a different question, and Taiwan is in a very precarious place right now. We need all the deterrence in the world to keep China in check. And this, if we got bogged down in a Venezuelan war, then it would certainly impact that. On the other hand, the likelihood of us getting into a guerrilla war
President's press conference
Venezuela is actually very low, because the military will totally oppose that. And whether or not he could overcome the institutional opposition of the military is very doubtful. The military participated in this particular action, not as an invasion, not as a military force per se, but instead as an implementer of the FBI arresting a fugitive from justice that had a warrant for arrest. They were very careful to explain that. Chairman Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was very clear in his statement that they were participating to assist the FBI in making an arrest. Now, that may seem ludicrous because they were using fighter bombers to do it. But technically, he's right, because the FBI agents were there. The FBI agents had a team that arrested him and that properly confined him, and they were just helping the FBI out. So that's a very important legal distinction. And by the way, that's going to be litigated, I assume, when Maduro is arraigned. They're going to argue that this whole episode was a kidnapping and it was totally illegal under U.S. law and international law and so forth. And it will be litigated. I think they'll lose, but it will be litigated.
I've got lots of questions for you on that, Professor Goggins, but I wanted to also bring in Lev Parnas into this conversation. Hey, Lev, how are you? I don't know if you can hear me.
Zev, how are you? Yeah,
you're not centered there. I don't know if you've met Professor Goggin before, the West Point history professor who's been writing a lot about Venezuela on Substack. And Lev Parnas, Professor Goggin, if you haven't met Lev, an insider. If people don't know, Lev Parnas, in the previous
I don't know.
Trump regime, you were, yeah, you look great. In the previous Trump administration, you were involved in negotiating a very similar kind of oil deal for the Trump, the first administration. Now you're here in the second. What are your thoughts about what happened last night, and what have you learned?
Well, I mean, I have more than thoughts. I've actually we just got off a live doing breaking news. And hi, Professor, pleasure to meet you. We have not met, but some of the news that I have been breaking is that a lot of this was theatrics when it comes to a lot of it was pre-planned when it comes to Russia, China, that before, and that's why you saw such a pinpoint of attack. That's why you saw no, basically zero resistance, included people in the Maduro regime. That's why you saw only Maduro get taken out, not other co-conspirators in his indictment or others that were looked at. It was just him and his wife. It has a lot to do with a lot of things. I just wrote about my Substack, and actually this all started. I mean, we've been talking about for months, for weeks about, but the actual plan, not plan, but the final go transpired in January 1st. I wrote in my Substack that after Kushner and Witkoff, after Kushner and Witkoff had a conversation with Kirill Dmitriev January 1st, there was conversation about the strikes on literally this week, and my sources didn't fail me again. But like they said that we were going to strike and try to take out Maduro this week, and we're seeing it play out right now. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. You obviously seen Donald Trump already come out say that China, he's going to give China some Venezuelan oil, so this way make everybody happy. As I've been saying, this is all theatrics. A lot of it for Trump, because of the timing, has to do also, Zev, with the Epstein files, as we've been reporting on, because January 5th is when the House reunites again. And the first thing that was supposed to be on the agenda at the time was the Epstein. I've even heard about impeachments with Pam Bondi and others, because right now they're basically supposed to be producing. They're not. There's more confusion. But now with the strike, I think what you're going to see is they're going to try to divert from there and try to use this as a rallying cry. Just even the fact that Maduro's on a ship being sent over here, they could have put him on a plane, had him here already in the United States. It's about now dragging out the news cycle. It's about now portraying, having him come in here, him and his wife. I mean, they basically kidnapped his wife. She's not even in the indictment, not charged. She's not charged with anything. So a lot to unpack, but yeah.
Theater is what you're saying. At the end of the day, you're saying this is a constructed event in order to help Donald Trump in the domestic market. It helps him by being a distraction to the many things that he has to face, but it doesn't really change the reality on the ground, because Donald Trump is still working with Maduro as vice president, now new president of Venezuela. He's still working with China and Russia. China, of course, the biggest oil client of Venezuela. Russia, a big military supplier to the Venezuelan government. I mean, he wants to keep the same system, bring in American oil companies to improve the infrastructure, and hope that everything works out. Not a word from the president about democracy.
Oh, no, it's not about democracy. I mean, you got to understand, this is what happened in 2018 when we were involved. We had a lot of, not a lot, but a pretty significant, important group of people, including several Trump donors that are involved in this right now, oil and gas guys that Trump is talking about that are going to go into it. And back then we succeeded in getting a $2 billion, not $billion, but 2 billion barrel oil contract from PDVSA, which is the state-run oil company of Venezuela, to get Maduro a soft landing, because Bolton and Pompeo pushed Guaido into that invasion, whatever you want to call it, coup that failed. A lot of people don't know that I met with Guaido's father and Rudy Giuliani in Spain and held talks with Alejandro Betancourt, a name that also, just like Harry Sargent and others that were involved in first supporting Maduro, then going against him. So you gotta understand, there's very few people that knew what Maduro was, and the fact that there was, he's being surrounded by not only his special forces, but also he's being surrounded by Russian, Chinese, Cuban, all kinds of allies that are helping out, and the fact that they, Trump, was so blatant and they didn't have to, go kill, go attack, just pinpoint, come in. They hand wrapped him, gave him like, just think about that. They just Maduro just in the middle of there's bombs going off all over the country, and Maduro sleeping, like Trump said. He's laying in bed, and we just came and picked him up out of bed. There's more to it than that. It's and there's a lot more that's going to come out. And simultaneously, what's happening that a lot of people now in the media is not noticing is what's going on. The attacks that Russia is doing in Ukraine. Those have intensified to such a degree where Kherson and others, is getting extremely detrimental there, so it's all part of one cabal, a lot to uncover. Hey, Waj.
Waj is joining us too.
I've been texting with Waj in the back also saying there's so much, to go over. Before we even got into this, one of the things I was breaking was actually Trump's health. And then, I texted Waj, and then all of a sudden all hell broke loose, and now we're here. So there's a lot to go over, guys. Unfortunately, I don't have too much time because my family will kill me. I'm supposed to make lunch for the kids. They love Dad's French fries. But I'm here with you because it's important, and I think the community needs to know. So
let me just ask quickly, and Waj, I don't know if you've met Professor Goggin before. The West Point history professor is another terrific Substacker who writes, from a very good point of view about the history of the military in America. He's, of course, a West Point history professor, formerly. I want Goggin just to quickly talk to Lev about you don't think that this is right. You don't think that this is a foreign construction or anything like that. You believe that this is the military just doing what it needs to do, and maybe is there a possibility that the military was misled by the president in this endeavor, thinking that they were going to be working with the opposition leaders, but then now seeing this turnaround where he's supporting oil? And we'll get to you in a second. Sorry.
Well, the way this would have happened, in my opinion, is that the special operations part of the military were briefed and given orders in early December. That's what the evidence is. And this plan has been involved in practices and rehearsals and all of that for many, many weeks. So this has been something that the military has been charged with doing. It was a mission, and the mission was to knock off Maduro, and they did that. Now, what happens after that is not up to the military. That's a civil responsibility, and that would go to the State Department. The State Department will have to work out with various groups, including the military, including the existing bureaucracy there, and including the opposition, the Democratic opposition. So that's not a military job. Now, the special forces actually do a pretty good job of negotiating and talking to and having networks with South American military, and including, to some extent, the Venezuelan military. They certainly do have liaisons there because that's just part of their job as special operators. Now, what is going on behind the scenes? I don't think anybody knows. They may say they know, but I don't believe that they know. I mean, I think all of this is done very quietly. The current commander, the combatant commander, is General Donovan, who started his career as a young lieutenant in the Marine Corps doing reconnaissance platoon work, which is very highly dangerous and involves getting inside information on what your enemy is doing. And it's kind of high-tech spying. And he's been doing spying for decades. He was in charge of that at higher levels all the way up till now. He's a four-star combatant
Do you
commander.
think they
He's a very
knew
impressive.
that this was going to be about oil at the end of the day?
Well, of course it's about oil. That's the entire economy of Venezuela. If you're going to do something to reinvigorate and help the people of Venezuela, you have to reinvigorate the oil economy, which this administration of Venezuela destroyed. It took it over in 2002, took over the professional, the existing state oil company, and fired 18,000 people. They fired engineers, geologists, all sorts of people, and put in loyalists who were not experts at what they were doing. And as a result, the entire oil company fell apart over the last 20 years.
Waj,
And
do you
so
want-
Trump was
Professor,
right. They're not producing the oil that they should be producing. It's a wreck, and there's numerous sources on that.
But
Now,
Professor,
Professor,
of
let's just
course, the
Lev is
military.
trying to jump in here, Professor. Let's just
yeah,
see if you can.
Professor. Yeah, if I can, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but with all due respect, I mean, you're saying that Trump is right, that this, they destroyed the oil. I mean, they're a sovereign country. What gives us the right, to be able to tell them how to run their country or how to produce their oil? And since when are we allowed to go strike military, take out, kidnap people in the middle of the night, take them out,
I'm
sovereign
not getting.
country,
Look,
and then
sir. Look, I'm
yeah.
not getting into that. Okay, I don't get involved in
We're asking a
these
question.
conspiracy
But it's a
theories, or I
question.
don't get
But it's not.
involved
It's
with
not
stuff
conspiracy.
that
These are
can't be
factual.
substantiated. What I'm
No, this
dealing
is
with are
factual,
facts.
Professor.
I'm
And I'm
not. I'm
talking
not
to you about
judging
facts.
anything. I'm just talking about the
No,
facts. I'm not judging it. Okay, please.
But
I'm
aren't these
not
facts,
judging
aren't
it.
these things that Lev is talking about facts? I mean, aren't we, aren't they actual proven facts?
I haven't seen any evidence of the cabal and so forth. I have seen just within the last hour or so, or 2 hours, that Donald Trump has cut a deal with the big oil companies. I've seen that. I think that he has cut a big deal with the oil companies, and
And
he
the
wants to bring
Chinese.
them in and have them take over those oil fields. I've said that from the very beginning, and I think that would be a great tragedy, and I think it would result in civil war.
Uh, isn't that what Lev is exactly saying? That this is you might call it a cabal, but they are a cabal in some ways. The oil. And Waj, I want to hear from you, especially about the Democratic leaders that have been ignored in this process. You've got Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, completely ignored. She's described as being not having any respect. And then also the previous winner of the elections there. What's your thought about the president going, against the traditional democracy opposition leaders there?
That's exactly correct. They're ignoring the Democratic opposition that got an 80% vote 12 months ago. That is stupid. That is very dumb.
Right.
Because
I want to hear from Waj
it's
on
not
this,
defensible. Number one, it's not defensible. And number two, it's impractical, because you cannot run a country when 80% of the public oppose you. And Maduro is a perfect example. He couldn't run the country either. And if we want to get into the same position he was in by some sort of, major civil commander that takes over that job of running the country, just like we did in Iraq, we're going to end up in the same mess that we got into Iraq, which is a never-ending war. And I don't think the American public will tolerate it for 1 minute.
I agree with that. Waj?
Yeah, this is a copy and paste, but dumber. We've been through this before, and this is dumber. And we're seeing an illegal invasion without congressional approval and authorization. The kidnapping of a foreign leader, no matter how terrible he is, he's terrible. No one here is a fan of Maduro. But Donald Trump has no problem befriending the world's worst people: Putin, MBS, Netanyahu, all war criminals, writing love letters to Kim Jong-un. But unilaterally, under false pretenses, he has now removed Maduro and his wife. Apparently I don't know who we are, but he said we are now running Venezuela. Who's we, folks? And then he said the people behind me, the only two people I saw was little Marco Rubio. So I think apparently this is going to be his fourth job. He's still open to putting boots on the ground. And furthermore, he gave the plot away. He openly said, yeah, for the oil. They took our oil. We took the oil back. And if you look at the 25-count indictment against Maduro, no mention of him stealing oil and no mention of fentanyl. And remember, folks, a couple of days ago, why everything is so dumb, and this is like dumber than the war on terror, is the war on terror was sold to us on the fiction of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? the mobile laboratories.
Yeah.
So he said that fentanyl was a weapon of mass destruction a couple of weeks ago. Remember that? And said that Venezuela was bringing fentanyl, even though it doesn't come through Venezuela. And then they're saying Venezuela is a threat to America. There's no proof that Venezuela is a threat to America. Then he's saying Venezuela is bringing drug cartels. No proof, no evidence whatsoever that the 105 people that he's killed so far in these strikes, that any of them are drug traffickers. We had a couple of survivors. One of them, within a day, we repatriated back to their country, didn't have any trial. Remember that? And the other two who are survivors hanging onto the side of the boat, we know there was a 43-minute video where these two unarmed sailors was hanging onto the side of the boat, and where Pete Kickseth allegedly gave the kill order, right? So they've been priming us for this for months. Lev and I have been talking about this for months. Keep an eye on Venezuela. Keep an eye on Venezuela. This was also in Project 2025, Zev. There was an entire page written about this, about regime change, about how Maduro is a hostile threat, not good for our interests. They want to remove him and bring in someone else. And speaking about what the professor was saying, the person who you'd want to bring in if you wanted some stability is Machado, right? Opposition leader, won the Nobel Peace Prize. But Donald Trump, in his pettiness, and I can only speculate, probably is like, I wanted the Nobel Peace Prize, to give it to Machado. He doesn't have, and what did he say earlier today? She doesn't have the love of the people. She actually has more love of the people than Donald Trump. And speaking about love of the war, a majority of Americans polled did not want military intervention or strikes in Venezuela. And furthermore, folks, as this is happening, the Wall Street Journal didn't even wait. An hour ago, the Wall Street Journal posted an article, Finance Industry Eyes Investment Opportunities in Venezuela, Zev. Okay, listen to this. About 20 business leaders, including those from some of the top hedge funds and asset managers, are preparing to go on a March trip to Venezuela to look at investment opportunities there, including in energy and infrastructure. They're not even hiding it. So where is this appetite for war with Venezuela? It's not in America. Where is this appetite for us now running Venezuela when Donald Trump is failing to run America? I don't see it. Now he's openly threatening to put boots on the ground. And furthermore, if you guys have been paying attention, I'm sure you have the clips. He threatened Cuba, threatened Mexico, threatened Colombia, openly gave light for Israel apparently to strike Iran. Struck Nigeria, and that Nigerian village is like, there's no ISIS here, and is striking Venezuelan boats. This to me is a mad king. He's dying, clearly, and I think the people around him, Stephen Miller, Russell Vought, the oil companies, the Broiligarchy, are trying to extract from him, Zev, everything they can get before he collapses. That's
a
my
very
point.
good point. The Truth Media, by the way, the company that owns Truth Social, has bought in, at least the leadership of that company, has
Devin
bought
Nunes.
into a company that's recently bid for all the Venezuelan oil interests, which
10
suggests
billion.
to me that Trump is potentially positioning himself to be a benefactor of these oil interests.
I
Lev?
mean, we just did a whole special on that. Please, if you guys want to go watch, me, Dean Blundell, and actually Malcolm Nance discussed the whole Devin Nunes and Truth Social and how Trump, yes, is positioning. I'll also give you 3 names, very important names to look. You'll see that are going to come up when it comes to a lot of this stuff. One is Gentry Beach. Gentry Beach is a gentleman that is went to college with Don Jr. He's also been, lurking in the back. I've dealt with them in the past. His name came up with Nord Stream 2. You'll see it in Venezuela, also his name. Another one is Harold Ham. And the third, least but not least, is Harry Sargent. Harry Sargent is my ex-partner, the group that Maduro used to call him his nephew back in 2018. I wouldn't be surprised if he was part of the information that was given right now and is going to be part of the contracts. Also, keep in mind the reason why Trump is making certain comments. Folks, I want you to understand, and it's important. If you haven't, go read my letter today. Before this all happened, I wrote it. I've been on the phone with my sources since 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. This was, not just the United States going in and attacking. We went. Donald Trump got the prize that he wanted to is Maduro. Nicolas Maduro gives him he he thinks a win with the Venezuelan population here in the United States, which, yes, Maduro is a dictator. A lot of people got hurt. He uses this as a prize. But B, also it's a distraction from what's about to take place with the Epstein files and the problems he's having. But the real people running right now Venezuela, and they gave up Maduro and they were protecting him, are the Russians and the Chinese. Just think about the fact that the Chinese met with them a few hours prior to this happening, and that they did not leave during this attack. This would be for them not to be warned or coordinate that Malcolm Nance, somebody, and maybe you, Professor, could tell me also, but that would be a very serious offense if all of a sudden we struck and killed a Chinese delegation in the process of meeting with Maduro. So a lot of this is coerced. That's why you're seeing now come out the news where he's now giving oil to China, because China knew beforehand and used Maduro as a ploy. And I've been talking about it already for weeks, like the professor said, correct? This was staged and prepared weeks ago, but the final go happened on March 1st, which I wrote about. And
Jan
that's
1st.
why you're seeing play out right now prior to the March 5th Congress coming back into office. Could have happened next week, but this was strategic. Also, the fact that it was done without any loss of life, just think about it. Nobody shot back, none of it. It was because it was done on the inside. That's a job. That's why Trump is saying he is running the country right now, because this was coordinated between Maduro's defense minister, I forgot his name, Machado, not Machado, if you forgot the name of him, and also the Russians and the Chinese. And that's why he is now going against the opposition, the real person, the one that won the Nobel Peace Prize, the one the country wants.
Machado, yeah.
And now he's allowing Machado, thank you, and is allowing the same dictatorship, same drug deal. Because remember, Maduro, if you believe that Maduro, which he is a drug, and all of that, then you understand that even in the indictment, he has co-conspirators. We did not go after all of them. We allowed the rest of his regime, the rest of the bad people to stay, the same people that were part of Maduro is not just one, it's part of a regime. We allowed them now to stay in power. And the opposition that we were supporting, that the world is supporting, we're now distancing. That's what I'm trying to explain.
They
Don't
can't even
listen
lie
to.
properly, Zev. I mean, at least with the war on terror, they at least tried to
Yeah.
come up with the fiction and a theater and uranium cake and weapons of mass destruction. This one, they can't even lie properly. At least lie properly to us as you justify this, completely illegal kidnapping and regime change. And now apparently we're running Venezuela. And folks, what people don't realize is there's always consequences, right? There's always repercussions. So if you are now threatening Cuba, if you're threatening Mexico, if you're already threatening Canada, if you're already engaged in a trade war, what happens? The world responds. The world retaliates. And what I tweeted, and what's painful for me to say as an American, China and Russia are winning without them doing anything, because all these countries are not going to move to find alliances with a superpower because they can't trust America. So they're going to go to China, they're going to go to Russia, right? And we've already seen Europe say, okay, we can't trust America when it comes to Ukraine or the EU, so we're going to align ourselves together, because he doesn't want us involved. He's really cozy with Putin.
India, look, remember India.
I mean, like, this is one, and then also other countries and bad faith actors would be like, okay, if the United States can unilaterally remove its opposition, what's going to stop Russia from trying to take out Zelensky? What's going to stop Israel from bombing Iran? What's going to stop China from just taking Taiwan? Nothing, right? So it, if you will, emboldens the world's worst authoritarian regimes. It makes America more isolated. It increases anti-Americanism. And furthermore, now we have to deal with the Venezuelan people. How confident are you that Venezuelans are A-okay with a foreign country coming in, deposing a very unpopular dictator, Maduro? And that, we just had a couple of minutes ago, folks, I want to tweet. This tweet came out where the Venezuelan defense chief said, quote, "We will not surrender." That's not good.
It isn't good. And also, the Machado has, as you were pointing out, Professor Goggin, a guerrilla force ready to go. I mean, if we're not working with Machado, who are we working with in Venezuela? And what does that guerrilla force do to an invading American army?
Yeah, that is a big problem. Now, Machado herself has been trying to persuade her people. It's an alliance, by the way. It's lots of different factions. She represents one of the bigger factions. The reason she won the Nobel Prize is that she talked her colleagues in the opposition to not start a guerrilla war. That's why she got the Peace Prize, because she advocated nonviolence. And she was working with Marco Rubio. And Marco Rubio, in fact, looks like to me he got her out of Venezuela because she was accompanied by quote unquote contractors, American contractors, who are expert at getting people out of the country, particularly through maritime operations. This was definitely an American sponsored event to get her out of the country so she could make a big splash in Europe and get the adulation of the crowd there. She didn't accept the award, her daughter did. Now, this was all done with American support. Now, it was necessarily Trump's support, but it was definitely an American operation that's got their fingerprints all over it. Now, given that, they have a very good relationship, at least up until today, with the opposition. And what they should do is start working with the opposition, since they are the obvious successors because they won the election. And many of the things that people want to achieve in Venezuela are good for the Venezuelan people, reinvigorating the oil economy, pumping money into the economy so that the natural diversified economy of commercialism in Venezuela comes back. It's been destroyed over the last 2 or 3 decades by the Chavistas. And so we want the good things to happen in Venezuela, and it will take a lot of money, a lot of investment. The Europeans are willing to make big investments into Venezuela. And of course, everybody is willing to invest in a money-making proposition. Otherwise, you don't get the money. You don't get the investments if it's not going to make people money, including the Venezuelans. So all of that is just a natural evolution of what should happen. It doesn't make any difference.
But the president is saying no. The president is saying absolutely not happening.
Can I say one thing real quick? Because it's breaking. Just from an hour ago.
What was the question? I didn't get the question.
1 second.
Oh, sorry. Can I just say this real quick? Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez addresses the nation. This is an hour ago. Mm-hmm. She's calling for Maduro's release and says the country will never be a colony of
she's irrelevant, my friend. She's irrelevant. They're all irrelevant right now. The only thing that is relevant right now, there's only really 2 powers in Venezuela, in my opinion. Number one is American combat power is very relevant because it's off the coast. Inside Venezuela, the relevant power are the opposition that represents 80% of the population. You can talk about all these schemes and all of these people's ideas about what should be done, but if you don't have 80% of the people behind you, you can't do a damn thing.
I agree with you.
I don't understand. I don't understand why more discussion is not made in these in discussing the matter with regard to the nature of the democratic opposition, the nature of the factions there, and the capabilities of those factions. And it includes a very strong guerrilla warfare capability in one of the factions.
Professor,
and that could come into play now if Trump does not begin to deal with them.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what everyone's saying.
That was the devil the devil was in the details, and that's what happened in Iraq. We didn't pay enough attention to the opposition and what the opposition could do to our army.
This is a whole different thing. See, Iraq was a war. You guys are confusing and you're not listening to what I'm trying to explain to you. And I'm sorry to
It's not different at all. It's exactly the same thing.
It is different because in Iraq they didn't have a deal that. See, Professor, you're talking from Professor. You're just talking from. You're not talking from inside knowledge.
Gentlemen, come on. You can do this. You can do this without talking each other.
Over you. Go ahead. Say whatever you want.
Thank you, Professor. Go ahead, Lev.
No, Professor, I'm just saying to you, you're making comments like for the fact that, this is evolution, that business people should come into Venezuela and this is how it helps. So that means we all should be just going around the world and countries and that we don't agree with the way they're running their countries and just should come over there and take out their leadership.
This is about agreeing with a country or not agreeing with the country.
What do you mean?
It is about democracy. As far as I'm
concerned. What democracy? What are you talking about? So what democracy you're talking about? So wait a second.
And
what
the
democracy are
opposition
you
won
talking about? So
80%. Are you saying we should ignore that fact? Is
What
that what you're
fact?
saying?
What fact? What fact?
The fact that the opposition won 80% of the vote. Are you
What are you
ignoring
talking
that
about?
fact? Do you
No,
think that's
absolutely. I'm
irrelevant?
for that. What are you talking about? You're saying that we have the right to go out and take out Maduro right now because of the opposition. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. We have the right to
What
take out Maduro because he's a crook. He's a criminal, and he's
so
been
that so that so
indicted,
yeah
and we have an arrest
wait
warrant for him.
wait a second. So you're saying that we could go around the wait, professor, wait,
that's not
stop.
unusual. We
Stop,
did that in
stop, stop.
Kosovo
Wait a
too,
second.
and
But
Serbia.
stop but
Wait,
yeah,
Professor, let's just hear this out. Let's hear what Lev is saying.
Professor, we can't have a normal conversation because you're trying to overtalk me and trying to just keep talking. I'm trying to understand your understanding of what's going on is that we as Americans should be going around the world and wherever we don't agree with the way they're running their country, and if we feel that we should then just go out, take out the leadership, and then turn the economy
You're
into
putting
how
words
we
into
think.
my mouth, and I have a right to object to you putting words in
Go
my
ahead,
mouth. You're just putting
tell
Go
words
me.
ahead,
in
That's
my
what I
Professor.
mouth.
heard.
I did
Go
not
ahead.
say any of that stuff. So
That's what I
that's
heard.
an
Go ahead.
irrelevant
Tell me.
conversation. What I did say is that number one, we had a warrant, and it's a legal warrant in the United States. Number two is we have the support of the Venezuelan people if we're going to restore the democratic opposition that won an 80% vote. Those two are facts. And I'm saying those facts should be taken into account and affect our policies with regard to Venezuela.
But
What
neither of
happens
those
in other
facts are
countries
true.
is
I
a
mean,
separate question.
Thank you.
Firstly, we obviously this is about oil and not about the arrest warrant, because that's what the president just told us for an hour or 2 hours on television. He said it's about the oil. It's not really about the narco-terrorism, which is what he said
Well,
before. And the other thing is,
wait,
we're not working with the opposition. We're working with the existing
Trump
Maduro
says
government.
a lot of things. That's just bullshit. Trump says a lot of things. It's about the oil. It's about this. It's about that. The fact is that there was an existing indictment of the man, and there's a superseding indictment. And under United States law, those are important facts. They are enforceable facts. They justify an arrest. They justify the armed forces supporting the FBI in arresting an indicted criminal. Okay.
We could arrest Putin for war crimes too.
The oil
Thank you.
thing is
We
speculation,
rode the red
and it's
carpet for
Trump
Putin.
speculation.
There's a lot of
Let's go bomb Israel, and let's go arrest war criminals Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir.
Right.
Well,
Let's not, folks.
you're
By the
just
way,
talking nonsense,
please
and I
don't.
don't really want to talk about nonsense. I want to talk about Venezuela, which is facts.
I
There
mean,
are certain
we
facts
have
regarding
we
Venezuela.
have to address this because I think all of us are kind of horrified by what we're listening to. Just because the Trump administration has this 25-count indictment, which is using as a justification to engage in literally a regime change and a kidnapping of a foreign leader, a foreign leader we all loathe, by the way. But at the same time, there are international laws, there are also national laws, and furthermore, there's also common sense and repercussions of what will happen with the United States now openly admitting, the president openly admits, yeah, it's for oil. It's in Project 2025. We know now, the Wall Street Journal has just said that oil companies are salivating at the mouth, going there, trying to take this country's oil. We know now, based on what you just said, that 80% of the country actually backs the opposition. He threw the opposition under the bus. And furthermore, now he's saying, yeah, we're going to do to Venezuela Cuba, you're next, Colombia, you're next, Mexico, you're next. So this is, if you're all for,
you're ignoring the election in 2024. You're completely ignoring it. All of those statements may be true, and I don't agree with these tactics necessarily. What I do think we're ignoring is the fact that the people of Venezuela spoke. 80% of them voted for the democratic opposition. Are you saying we should ignore that? And that we should not support the democratic opposition in taking over the government, because we now have the power to do that.
We support
For whatever
them.
reason we got that power, we now have that power to do that. And I gather what you
And we're
gentlemen
not
are
doing it.
saying is that we shouldn't support the democratic opposition to take control of the country. Is that right?
But that's not what's happening. What's happening is Trump just said that he's not supporting the opposition the way you're saying it.
Yeah.
If that was the case, I would say,
I know
maybe.
Trump is wrong, and Trump is not doing
but-
what he should do. But
So,
I am
but that's
talking
the whole.
about
But that's the
what
whole.
should be done.
But that's.
Oh, well,
but
that's
that's
what that
still.
was a justification for Saddam Hussein in Iraq, right? This is a brutal dictator. This is a tyrant. This is a man who oppresses and represses his people. America came in, toppled the statue, arrested Saddam Hussein. What happened? Over 1 million Iraqis died. It was the birth of ISIS. America was not greeted as liberators. We were terrible on the ground. We're terrible. We're really good at bombing, but we're terrible at actual regime change and being boots on the ground. And now Donald Trump is saying we're going to unilaterally, illegally help you Venezuelans be the Democrats we want you to be by kidnapping your leader, bombing your country, and then the actual opposition leader who has the popularity sport, we don't trust her to be our yes men, so we're going to sideline her.
With all due respect, sir, that is just
you.
propaganda that you're announcing here.
No, that is exactly what the
Kidnapping
president
is
said.
not
facts.
legally
Those are
appropriate.
facts.
That's
It
what he said.
was an arrest, an illegally authorized arrest by the United States.
Okay, watch. 1 second. Professor,
I will
what
always
arrest
speak out
warrant
against
do we have?
Hamas.
Wait a second, guys.
Don't
Professor,
use the wrong terms. At least
what
be
arrest
factual.
warrant do we have? What arrest warrant do we have for his wife? Forget about Maduro. Please, Professor, tell us where in the indictment and show me where there's an arrest warrant for his wife that we kidnapped in the middle of the night and are bringing her here. Show me what arrest warrant do we have for his wife, Professor?
You know, criminals normally are arrested pursuant to an indictment in the early hours of the morning, and it's not so funny, my friend.
What do you
if
mean
you're
his
on
wife?
the other end of that.
So wait a second.
So
We should arrest.
This is not
so
an
when we
unusual
arrest,
proceeding.
when Donald Trump gets arrested, we should arrest Melania with him, right? Are you agreeing to that? Melania should go down with Donald. I mean, what are you saying, Professor?
The professor is trying to say, I think, that
What am I
there
saying?
are 80% of the
I'm
people.
saying that the indictment was handed down. It was
not for
a
his wife.
superseding indictment.
Not for his wife.
There was an arrest warrant,
not
and the
for his wife.
FBI arrested the man.
Not
and they
for
were
his
helped
wife.
out by the United
Not
States
for his
military.
wife.
That's what I'm
Not
saying.
for
Those
his
are
wife,
facts.
Professor.
Now, you
Not
don't like
for-
it? Fine. You
No,
don't have to
not
like
for-
it, but those are the
Professor,
facts.
not for his wife, Professor. The fact is, you keep the rest. I think you're mega, Professor, because I don't understand. Can you agree with me at least that his wife does not have an arrest warrant and there's no indictment, superseding indictment that has to do with his wife in the Southern District of New York? Do you agree
Oh, no,
with me,
his wife
Professor?
was indicted as well. The superseding indictment, you're out of
What?
date. The new superseding indictment that was unsealed today included the wife and his son. I don't know whether they got the son or not, but they got the wife. And the wife was indicted, and they have a long
unsealed
list
today,
of charges.
exactly.
Let me finish. They have a long list of charges that stem back to 2006, where she accepted millions and millions of dollars of cash personally on behalf of her husband, who was at that time the foreign minister of Venezuela. So there's a long list of facts in the indictment that you should at least be familiar with if you want to talk about the situation legally.
What
And
happens if a foreign country-
legally, if they think the indictment is bad, they can litigate it in court in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll find out whether a court would agree with them. But it didn't sound like that to me when I think it is Mr. Honig on CNN, who's a former prosecutor in the New York Southern District of New York, went through the indictment in detail today, and I listened to it, and it was pretty impressive.
Look, I'm sure there are grounds for arresting Maduro. He's a terrible guy, did terrible things. There are also no grounds, though, for interfering in a regime change like this that we've done in Venezuela. We just don't go and pick up people we don't like in the middle of the night with helicopters. But particularly, I think what you, Professor Goggin, you said that the working with the opposition is the key factor here, and you believe that arresting Maduro would lead to the democratic opposition taking power in Venezuela. That is not what the president has said today. The president is not interested in returning democracy to Venezuela.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
We all agree on that.
I don't think Trump is doing the right thing at all. And because he's not dealing with the Democratic opposition, he should be dealing with the elected president-elect. He's actually a president-elect, Gonzalez. His name is Eduardo Gonzalez. Eduardo Gonzalez is the president-elect of Venezuela, and he has more moral authority and legal authority and legitimacy than anybody else. Certainly, Maduro's
president's not doing
government
this.
doesn't
Trump is
have
not
any
doing any of this.
legitimacy. They were beaten.
Trump is handing this over to the oil companies.
Well, of course
you can't
he's not doing
justify the
anything.
arrest of Maduro.
That's why I oppose it. But
Okay, but you should oppose the
but you're
arrest of
not
Maduro
whether
as
opposing
Trump
well.
is
him.
The
doing
same
the
way.
right thing or
You're
not,
agreeing with him.
the fact
You're agreeing
is
with
that
him.
his policies are going to lead to a civil war if he doesn't start working with the Democratic opposition. He may not like it, but he's going to have to do it. And as an historian, I'm
That
just pointing out
but that's
that
not
there's a
fact
lot
because what
of
happened in the first
there's a lot of
with Guaido?
historical precedents for this not working out and
What happened
resulting
with
in civil
Guaido?
war if the right policies are not followed.
I
What
agree with
happened?
you on that,
But what
Professor.
happened with Guaido? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Waj. Go ahead.
No, I said on that last point, I agree with. I think this is stupid. I think this is reckless. I think this is where I disagree with the professor. I think this is illegal. I think they have not thought about the repercussions. Even though it was swift and precise, and you see all these people praising the operation, you have to remember, folks, you can't gaslight me. I'm old enough to remember the war on terror, and I'm old enough to remember how everything was going to be perfect after we were going to be greeted as liberators and we're going to topple Saddam Hussein. What happened instead? The birth of ISIS. The birth of anti-American extremism, right? Who came back and is in control of Afghanistan right now? Taliban. And America eventually had thousands of soldiers that were dead, and it was a wasted 2 decades worth of war that destabilized America and American power. And furthermore, then we had the 2009 economic crisis. So right now what we're having is an old, decaying, dying man, Donald Trump. Clearly, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the video of him in the presser. He did not look
Terrible.
well. He looked, I mean, he was falling asleep even as Pete Hegseth was speaking.
Read my Substack. Watch.
And you couldn't even speak on message, right? He openly said, "We have the oil. It's for the oil. We're gonna make money from the oil. We're running Venezuela now." Already the message is contradicted because Venezuela, I mean, whether or not these people in Venezuela have the power to represent the people, you do not see anyone saying, "Welcome, America. Thank you. We're ready to be run by you." I mean, this is an entire country, folks, with millions of people, right? So they hated Maduro, sure.
Wait. But on a factual matter, that you're wrong there. Mercado issued a statement several hours ago saying that she welcomed the United States coming in, and she requested that the United States recognize the president-elect, Eduardo Gonzalez, as the provisional president of Venezuela. Now, she just won, or they, as a group, won 80% of the mandate of the Venezuelan people. They're the only ones who won. A year ago, they won. Nobody else did. So they do represent the people of Venezuela. And when they speak, they are representing their constituents. And I think they should be given the respect of that. Donald Trump didn't give her that respect, but we should.
But Professor, what we're saying is we are giving her that respect. We are saying that he should have uplifted her. But when he was specifically asked about Maria Machado, he threw her under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He did.
Well,
and
that's
also,
easier said than done. You don't throw somebody that's leading 80% of Venezuelan people under the bus. I mean, he throws a lot of people under the bus. Zelensky, for example, was
But isn't that
thrown
what
under the
Waj
bus.
just said? That we're
Zelensky
going to
is shoving it up his ass right now. So I don't think throwing under the bus works very well for Mr. Trump. He's thrown a lot of people under the bus. They're still alive and they're still doing
he threw me
things
under
that he
the bus,
doesn't like
Professor.
Nancy
He
Pelosi
threw
and
me
so
under the
forth.
bus. Professor, he threw me under the bus also. I'm here.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the problem is we could land up in a quagmire. I mean, the military challenge here is we're now locked into a position where we have to deal with this Venezuelan problem, which could involve a civil war against an American takeover of Venezuela.
It's not going to be, guys. Listen, it's not going to be a civil war.
That's
if you
exactly
look, I know. Listen, this is all coordinated behind the scenes, just like you've seen what happened back in 2019. Same exact thing. You had Pompeo and Bolton support
With
Guaido.
all due respect, that's a bunch of bullshit. It's not coordinated
You don't
behind
even
the
know these
scenes.
people.
This
You
is
don't
all
even know these
floating
people.
Professor, he was involved.
Professor,
It's
you have
very,
no-
very, very
go do
movable.
some
There's
research
nothing,
and find
no
out who you're
agreements
talking
are
to
gonna-
before. You
Professor,
have no
one
idea
sec-
what you're talking about, Professor. You've
Professor,
never
one
met
second.
anybody. I've said it. I've spoke to Maduro. I've sat in the room with Guaido. I've been sent by Trump to do this, and you're telling me, have you ever spoken to Maduro? Have you ever spoken to Trump? Have you ever spoken to Guaido? Have you ever even met with any of these people? What are you
Because you
sitting here
speak to
trying to
these
push
guys
some crack
doesn't
of
mean you're
bullshit?
authority on them.
Well, he
What do you mean,
negotiated
what
this
makes
in
you
the previous
authority on them? What
administration.
makes you authority? Because you read some books that I wrote? What makes you authority? What makes you authority? Because you read
all
some
I'm
books.
doing
You
is
don't even know.
analyzing the
Listen, me.
facts. I'm
Don't.
not
I'm
saying
not
I'm a
analyzing.
particular
Listen.
authority. I'm
I'm
just
giving you
analyzing the
facts. Listen
facts.
to me. Listen to me, sir. You could analyze all you want. I'm giving you facts. So if you want to listen, be quiet and listen with some respect, and then you could analyze whatever you want. Because all you're trying to do is push some propaganda, trying to say that, oh, this is part of natural. We should go in there, and the Venezuelan people are happy that we're bombing them and taking over
Sir,
their
you're entitled
oil,
to your
and it's going to be
opinion.
better for
You're
them,
entitled to
and
your
they should be
opinion,
happy.
okay?
But in the
But you're not
meantime, that's
entitled
not
to your
taking
own
place.
facts, and that's the
It's the
problem. You've
facts
got
It's
is the
not
your
the
own
facts.
case,
facts that you're
Professor.
dealing with,
Professor,
Okay,
and
what
I don't
happened in
think
wait,
they're
2000?
gentlemen.
What's the
viable
facts?
facts.
What
That's what
happened
I'm
in
saying.
2019? What happened in 2019, Professor? What happened in 2019? Let's talk about. Because I was there. I was the one on the phone with setting up a soft landing for Maduro. I was there when Rudy Giuliani went into the White House and then Bolton walked out and started the invasion with Guaido. I was there with Alejandro Bancourt, who is in exile in Spain right now, that was supporting Chavez and Maduro and then switched to start supporting Guaido. I was there with Guaido's father on the phone with President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and Guaido, trying to make have Trump
Yeah,
support them
but
more for
I'm not
Guaido.
arguing
And
about that. I'm not
so
arguing
stop.
about
So
that.
what
I
I'm
think
telling
that's
you,
wonderful.
so what
That's a
I'm
good
telling you,
Those are
background.
facts.
I am
Those are
talking
facts.
about today and the Democratic opposition. And the Democratic opposition, I am saying, is not being given the respect that they're due.
We all agree
And
that. We all
that's
agree
my
that.
advocacy
Everyone
right
agrees
now.
that.
I'm advocating for the Democratic opposition, for Maria Corina Machado, and
absolutely.
that Eduardo Gonzalez, excuse me, is the president-elect of Venezuela, and he should be installed as the provisional president pending a new election. That's what I think should
I
be
think we
done.
all agree on
I
that
don't
one.
think Trump
That
is doing it. I don't, and certainly the Chinese and the Russians and all those other people are not going to do it. Maybe the Europeans would help out. That would also be a good thing. That's all I'm saying.
I think we all agree that there
And what
should
you
be
did
a
back in
global coalition here, and
2019 was wonderful. I don't really know very much about that. You're right. I don't pretend to, but I do know something about democratic opposition. I do know something about guerrilla warfare. I do know something about what our
And I agree
military
with you, Professor.
does.
That I agree with you on, Professor. And that's what I'm saying to you. I agree with you 100% that we should support the person that 80% Machado, and we should be supporting him. But unfortunately, I think what we're talking about, and I think where we're having
So
maybe a
we
miss.
agree.
everyone
So we
agrees.
Of
That's
agree.
a good
course, we
thing.
agree on that 100%. No, absolutely. I think
Thank
where we're
you.
having a miss, I think where we're missing each other is what we're saying is that should happen. But unfortunately, what's taking place and what Trump is doing and what his inner circle and what we're reporting on with from certain sources that we all have, that this is not what's taking place. This is not, Trump
Well,
is
I
not
never said it
helping
was taking
the
place. In fact, I
opposition.
was saying that it
Right.
was a stupid policy that was taking place. And I think that the key here is the fact that the professional military in Venezuela haven't been paid for months, at least not regularly, and that there are an open wound in the government of Venezuela. And Trump could easily step in and say, "Hey guys, we're going to pay you your salaries. Just come and do what we tell you to do." And I think that's what he's banking on happening right now.
Well, let's
And
bring
he
this.
is dead wrong. He is going to be proven dead wrong because he's going to ignite a civil war if he does that.
Let's bring this back to what domestically the political party should be doing. What should Waj, you can help us understand this. What should we be doing in terms of a democratic alliance here to push for the right things to happen with this administration in Venezuela?
So I got to run because it's 4 p.m. And it's a Saturday. Remember when we used to have weekends off?
Yes, I remember those.
But
Those were nice.
I feel like Chris Van Hollen, Mark Warner, and others actually have the right point here, where they're reminding people about the history and the context. And even though Maduro is a terrible man, talk about the role of Congress, the role of authorizing military force, the fact that there is no proof that Venezuela is sending fentanyl, that if Donald Trump is saying that Venezuela is a threat to America, there's no proof whatsoever that he threatened America. The fact that he says he wants to protect us against drugs, well, he just pardoned one of the great drug traffickers in modern history, a drug smuggler, president of Honduras. The fact that he has no solutions for the economy, has no solutions for healthcare, the fact that he has not released the Epstein files. And if Donald Trump can engage in this unilateral regime change and war with Venezuela, then what stops him from doing this with Mexico? What stops him from doing this against Cuba? What stops him against doing this with Colombia? I think they should raise the alarm that this man is unhinged, that he does not care about the Constitution, he does not care about the rule of law, that this person is working on behalf of the oligarchy and oil companies. In a perfect world, he should be impeached for this, or at the very least, there should be an investigation, right? You made all these claims against Venezuela. I would like him to actually have more hearings about these Venezuelan strikes against these fishermen. Over 100 fishermen have been killed. No proof, no allegation, no proof whatsoever that they were smuggling drugs, right, Zev and Lev? We still haven't had the release of the video where Pete Hegseth ordered the double tap, which straight up killed those two unarmed fishermen. That's a straight up war crime, if indeed we're at war. And apparently now we're at war with Venezuela, right? And then I want to follow up as to who's profiting. This Wall Street Journal article that just came out today about these oligarchs and these tech bros who are going to Venezuela. Who are these people? What's the deal that's being made about the oil? Who's controlling the oil, right? Who's making all this money? And then finally, I would like to ask and have some investigations and hearings into who is running Venezuela. The President of the United States of America said that we are running Venezuela. Who is we? Right. And so this, I need them to be on top of this. I want hearings. I want investigations. I want people to answer basic questions because, folks, going back full circle, this is like the war on terror, but dumber. Like, this is so dumb and done without any authorization. So I think more and more transparency, more and more accountability, and keep pressuring them for a release of the video when it comes to the Venezuelan strikes. And I think now, if I will politically, what they can do strategically, there is a contingency of MAGA folks and independents who are America first. And America first isn't just white nationalism. America first, Zev and Lev, is no military interventionism, no support to Israel, no $40 billion to Argentina, and no friggin' world policeman and regime change, right? So there's going to be a massive fissure. And I don't know if you've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas.
I did see that.
They have been hardcore about this. So I would exploit that fissure politically because the midterms are coming up. But my fear, though, Lev, and I wanted to ask this, Lev, before I left. Sorry, Zev, it's your show, but I want to throw this out there. My fear is Donald Trump is dying. They know he's dying. And as he's dying, they're playing for all the marbles. And they're seeing what they can get away with. Oh, we just attacked Venezuela without congressional approval. Okay, maybe we can attack Mexico. Oh, we can unleash the National Guard and the military. And let's see if we can unleash more military and National Guard and ICE. I think they're going for the tilt and seeing what they can get away with. And my fear is they're setting the stage. What I've always said is to implement the Insurrection Act and martial law.
I think it's exactly where we're heading. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Lev.
and I was just gonna say because I gotta go also. And first of all, Waj, I think we could do today or tomorrow a special live about his health, because you have been speaking about this already for a while, and I can confirm with I wrote a story about yesterday. Some of my sources finally are breaking, and the dam is breaking a little bit, and they're talking about IV use. They're talking about some of the different drugs that he might be using. And I just want to say to you that there is a lot behind the scenes that is happening, with the push right now by Stephen Miller and Russell Vaught, and Waj is 100% right. They're trying to push it really hard right now. And I could tell you this much, that his health is a lot worse than he's playing it. There's a lot, that's why you're seeing a lot of these things interact. And Professor, before I go, I just want to apologize if I raised my voice. I did not mean to. We get passionate in debates, especially some of the stuff that's going on, because I haven't slept all night. I've been on the phone with my sources breaking a lot of the stuff that's happening. I do look forward. I welcome you to read some of my Substack letters, understand who I am, what I talk about, and I would welcome you to have another live if Zev wants to do it with Waj, and we could talk about, because I'm sure we mean and talk about the same thing, but and it's better for people to understand exactly what we're talking about. But there's a lot more to this than we could fit into this live. So folks, subscribe, stay tuned, put your notifications on, and there's a lot more.
Yeah, I
Waj,
totally
let me
agree
know.
with that. I mean, the more discussion we have about this, the better. The more people that are informed about these different views, the better. And I think this was a good, lively discussion. It was kind of fun. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
I
you.
all for being
appreciate it,
here.
and I
That's
appreciate your background. I understand your background. I just have a different approach and a different background as a result.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think together, I think we could benefit knowledge from your, from being a professor in your history, my living in it. I think we could do a really good live, Zev. Anytime, I would love to.
yeah, I'd love to
So,
organize that, and you two should get to know each other because you do have great perspectives. I know you've got to
absolutely.
go do French fries.
Yes, yes. Take
Lev,
care.
Parnas, thanks for being
Actually,
here.
take care,
And
guys.
thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Professor. I appreciate your time today. The press is the West Point history professor. Lev Parnas is,
I enjoyed it.
yeah, it was a good
Okay.
time. And I thank you for
Thank
being
you.
such a good sport with all the back and forth there. It's, I think, a really important debate that everyone needs to have right now. So thanks so much. The West Point history professor, by
All
the way,
right.
is
Very good.
where people should
All right. Bye.
subscribe to you at the Substack. And then we'll see you again soon. All right, that's the West Point history professor, Terence Goggin. Wajahat Ali from the Left Hook, another great subscription for anyone who's interested in this stuff. And of course, Lev Parnas at Lev Remembers, a man who was inside the room the first time round when Donald Trump tried to seize the Venezuelan oil, with a lot of insights right now about what's happening right now as Donald Trump is trying to do it again in his second administration. Well, this has been a longer and quite interesting few hours. I've been on the air since about 1:30, covering this breaking news coverage. Thank you so much to all of you at home for being here. Please support every single person that we have on. These are people who are giving up their lives, their livelihoods, in order to share their knowledge with you. So become a paid subscriber if you can, to Waj, to Terence Goggin, and to Lev Parnas. And if you can, as well, to narrative.org, which is where we do all this news coverage, plus all the Epstein coverage we've been doing. This story is still developing. We'll continue to cover it in great detail here on Narrative and on all our Substacks. We really value your support. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again next time on Narrative. Have a great day, and we'll see you again on Monday.